Mr. Myers, it's quite a shop you have here. What are you selling here? Was this a gun shop originally?
It's military surplus, all the wars. But our main object is the war between the states because it happened here.
The Civil War?
Well, it's not a civil war. Civil war is in one country. We had two countries, Confederate States of America and the United States of America.
If somebody came here and called you a racist, what would your reply be?
Wouldn't make any difference to me what they call me. As of last year, I was here 50 years, in spite of everybody.
All your mothers and your brothers and your sisters and your fathers and everybody walking this land, no matter your race, your creed, your tribe, whose nation you defend, with open hearts, open minds, lend a helping hand each time to the mothers and the brothers and the sisters and the fathers, everybody walking this land.
Da oldeforeldrene mine seilte inn her til New York havn for ca. 120 år siden, så ble de møtt av Frihetsgudinnens, storslagne, åpne åsyn. Men når jeg står her, så ser det faktisk ut som Frihetsgudinna har vendt USA ryggen. Og sånt blir det jo dårlig stemning av. Og dårlig stemning var bare fornavnet da sinte Trump-supportere stormet kongressen den 6. januar i fjor. I galskapen som utspilte seg den dagen, så det et bilde som vanskelig å fjerne fra netthinna. For første gang i historien vaiet sørstatsflagget inne i hjertet av kongressen. Båret fram av folk som oppfattet seg selv som patriotiske frihetskjempere som krevde rettferdige valg. Men for meg og de fleste andre amerikanere symboliserer dette flagget det motsatte av rettferdige valg, patriotisme og frihet. Tvert imot dette flagget et symbol på et Amerika hvor noen få veldig rike og veldig hvite menn styrte landet som sin egen private bomullsplantasje og eide andre amerikanere som om de var krøtter. Og jeg lurer på om vi må helt tilbake til den amerikanske borgerkrigen for å forstå det som skjedde 6. januar. For noen har denne krigen aldri helt tatt slutt. Ja, jeg vet ikke. Jeg burde kanskje hatt en blå, da. Her i Alabama samles etterkommere av soldatene som kjempet for å bevare slaveriet.
This was one of the targets of the Union Army when they swept down through Alabama. They wanted to destroy the furnaces that were producing the steel on their way to Selma, where the armory was. Well, it's Dixie, man.
That's the Dixieland, Dixie anthem.
Yes, sir.
What does the word Dixie mean?
Dixie is the slang name that they created for the 7 states that started the secession to start with. So they formed their own country, and it was Dixie, Confederate States of America.
Amerikas blodige borgerkrig var en kamp mellom et ganske demokratisk industrisamfunn i nord og et plantasjesamfunn i sør, styrt av mektige slaveeiere. Jeg har alltid vært stolt av at tippoldefaren min kjempet på nordstatenes side for demokrati og mot slaveri. Men noen hvite folk forteller ofte en annen historie om borgerkrigen. For mange hevder fortsatt at den først og fremst handlet om retten til selvstyre og kampen for sørstatsidentiteten.
To me, Dixie is more of a feeling. You know, I'm from Dixie.
What is that feeling?
It's a feeling of pride. It's home. It's a people, it's a culture, it's a heritage, it's...
But you also had slaves.
Well, we had field workers, We bought slaves from the north, brought them down here, and turned them into field hands and field workers and blacksmiths, and built homes for them, provided food for them, provided care for them. You know, and that's why I say it was more of a war. It's like any other war. It's all about the money.
Three cheers for Dixie! Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip! Hooray! Hip hip! Hooray!
Ekstremismeforsker Heidi Beirik har skrevet mye om hvordan arven etter borgerkrigen fortsatt preger deler av amerikansk politikk og samfunn den dag I dag.
Nice to meet you. Come on in.
Thank you. Wow, what a beautiful place.
Oh,
what a
thanks.
beautiful location.
Yeah, it is. It is quite lovely, actually. This
Wow.
it's the river from the movie Deliverance.
What? the actual river?
Yeah, the Kusawati River. This is the river from Deliverance.
In Norwegian, picnic med døden. Picnic with death.
Is that what it's called?
Mm-hmm. How about that, huh?
God, that makes it even scarier than Deliverance.
I forgot my banjo, but maybe you have one. Or, you know.
I'm not that Georgian.
You're not that Georgian?
No.
When you saw the Confederate flag at the Capitol, what was that all about?
It was all about rejecting America's increasingly diverse democracy, not being able to accept the fact that this country is changing demographically and wanting to stop that. And Trump represented sort of that white consciousness. He did more to bring racism and hate back into the mainstream than anybody had in quite a while. He used racism to motivate his base. And that was the culmination, right? A guy walking around with a battle flag in the Capitol is making a statement about what America should look like. It's something from the past, and it's, you know, all caught up with the legacy of defending slavery after the Civil War. And, you know, I don't really have time for people who try to claim this heritage, not hate thing around the battle flag. What the Confederacy about was always clear. And if you want to say that it was about states' rights and not slavery, you're still saying it was about slavery, because states' rights was about allowing slavery.
That would mean the power that the various states have as opposed to the federal government. That's what states' rights
Yeah,
mean.
this idea that a state can decide its policies for itself and not have to, from the Southern position, accede to the federal government's unacceptable demands, right? But it's always been about race. It's always been about race in this country.
Why?
Because it's the original sin of slavery, right from the get-go. You know, this country was founded on white supremacy and the oppression of black people.
Sunrise doesn't last all morning.
Det virkelig sånn at denne bekmørke delen av amerikansk historie fortsatt preger dagens USA?
All things must pass. All things must pass away.
Jeg på vei for å møte min gamle venn James. Men jeg havna midt oppi et cosplay-convention, gitt. Jeg har kledd meg ut som det skumleste som finnes, nemlig 52 år gammel mann som jobber I media.
How are you?
Good to see you.
Welcome to Tulsa. Welcome to Tokyo and Tulsa.
Nice costume, man.
Thank you, yes. Didn't get the memo, but okay, cool.
Did you know about this?
I didn't know it was this weekend. I know that they do it here.
It's nuts.
Yeah.
James en gammel rockekompis av meg. Han opprinnelig fra California, men gjennom sin lange militærkarriere har han bodd mange forskjellige steder. Blant annet her I Tulsa, Oklahoma.
So how have you been? It's been a few years.
It's been good. It's been it's been at least 3-4 years now. Yeah.
You want to go somewhere more mundane?
Sure,
And not so noisy?
A little less colorful, yeah.
You can see that there's a patio outside that restaurant.
Okay.
How has America changed during your lifetime?
I mean, I'm only 43, so I would say on the surface, you know, we always talk about our progress, we do. And we've made a lot of progress. But the problem is people who see one group's progress as a negative for their group are always going to be threatened.
white America is being replaced by brown and black America?
By ethnicities, by religion, by culture, by politics. You pick any area they're entrenched, and they'll tell you that if we don't fight, we're going to lose. This America that exists in their mind, the golden 50s and the Dwight Eisenhower era, they think that that's going to be gone forever. And some things are changed forever. But America is nothing but a state of constant change.
Have you ever experienced pure, blatant racism?
As far as have I been called names? Have I been called nigger before? Sure, tons of times. And in recent years, they become more emboldened, so I hear it out loud now, more than I did when I was growing up. I had one officer I worked for in the military who told me straight up that I had only gotten my position because I was black and I probably hadn't earned it. Yeah, I would say I've been very fortunate in, what I've experienced versus what I know others have gone through, but no one's immune from it.
Noe annet ingen immune mot her I sørstatene alle påminnelsene om krigen som ble utkjempet mellom nord og sør. Fortsatt finnes det tusenvis av bygninger, veier, militærbaser og byer som oppkalt etter taperne av borgerkrigen.
A lot of people don't understand that battle flags went up on Southern state houses not in 1865, right? Which a lot of people stupidly think that this was like, pro-Confederacy right after the war ended. They went up when segregation was removed from the schools after Brown v. Board. Those were Southern states saying we're not desegregating
What year
our
would that
schools. 1954. And they stayed up in a lot of cases until very, very recently. So it was a statement by white Southerners that we will never send our kids to school with black people. We will never have equality with black people. Black people are our inferior.
Det at mange av disse statuene har blitt reist I nyere tid, lenge etter krigen, synes jeg ganske spesielt. Altså, sist jeg sjekka, så ble det ikke satt opp Vidkun Quisling-byster rundt omkring på norske torg på 1990-tallet. I senere år har en god del av statuene blitt fjernet. Men for mange disse monumentene vel verdt å ta vare på. Advokaten Martin O'Toole talsmann for organisasjonen Sons of Confederate Veterans. De jobber for å holde sørstatsarven I live.
Where are we?
We are in the Marietta Confederate Cemetery, which is a resting place for over 3,000 Confederate soldiers who died during the Atlanta campaign.
And you represent an organization called?
Sons of Confederate Veterans. It's the oldest military hereditary organization in the United States, and it's for male descendants of persons who served in the Confederate military or the Confederate government.
Are you in a way celebrating the southern side of the Confederate side of the Civil War?
I think we're celebrating our ancestors.
Can you understand why people will react negatively to seeing seeing Confederate flags and Confederate statues of Confederate generals?
Yes, I can understand why people may not like that. But I think what it is, if they talk about diversity in this country, but they don't want to have diversity of opinion. Apparently, we're all told we have to toe the line.
For
the
whom?
same way.
For who?
For the establishment. So yes, I understand why people may not like it. I think it's an interesting point of conversation. And that's the problem. We are not having conversations today. We're having screaming matches. Nowadays, since we have no real segregation in the country or anything like that, the virtue signaling crowd is looking for new things. And so they're going after inert things such as granite, cloth, stuff like that to explain how they're great, compassionate leaders.
Is America a racist country today? Are the American institutions racist?
I don't know that the institutions are racist. I think what you might say is that we need to really look at the basis of racism. And is racism scientifically supported by difference in genetic groups or not? In other words, when we hear people complaining about racism, they say we're not having equity of outcome. We all are different. So to expect that everybody will end up in the same spot doesn't seem likely. So some scientists, not very popular anymore, used to claim that races were different because of their evolution over time in their differing environments. For example, North Asians and Caucasians apparently have higher IQ scores than South Asians, Africans. There's been all kinds of discussions about that. So if you're saying the institutions are racist, we have to go behind that and find out why do we have these differences in outcome. We're not even trying to answer that question.
But still, so you're saying that, black people are, less intellectually equipped than white.
All I know is that's what the IQ tests show.
Ja, artig type han Martin. Han jo som en advokat tatt rett ut av en sånn John Grisham-roman eller John Grisham-film. Men det der at han liksom går inn i dette med at det forskjell på folk på genetisk nivå, den så jeg faktisk ikke komme. Og ble litt satt ut av det.
Det riktig at det måles IQ-forskjeller mellom befolkningsgrupper som har ulike levekår. Men å hevde at det skyldes genetikk, har ikke lenger en plass i den etablerte vitenskapen. Likevel det en seiglivet myte som brukes til å rettferdiggjøre at noen amerikanere kan behandles som annenrangs borgere.
For someone my age, raised by the parents I had who grew up in their area, my parents were both born in the 50s. My grandparents were born in the 30s and 20s. They had all experienced some of the really ugly parts of America, and so that really shaped their worldview. And I was raised with the idea that I always had to do better. I had to work harder. People are going to look for me and expect me not to be as good at anything. And so I was always taught that I had to work twice as hard. I was always taught that my failures will be amplified and my victories will be minimized. And so I couldn't just go out and just fuck off, quit school, whatever, because people are gonna be like, oh, see, yeah, they can't do that. Before my parents' generation and my grandparents' generation, people didn't even finish high school. So it was a huge deal that I was like the standard bearer for the family. Every time I did something new, I would hear about it from uncles and aunts because the people that were older than me didn't grow up seeing people do it. And so I kind of carried that fucking burden for my late teens and my early 20s. I was not doing for me, I was doing for everyone in the family.
That's a very heavy burden to carry. It's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, it sucked. I won't lie, it was not fun as a young man. It took me a long time to grow into it. And there's things I know now about my own family that I didn't know as a kid, and things that some of my family members had gone through that I didn't know.
Like what?
You look at those photos of the National Guard escorting the little girl to school. That happened there in Arkansas. That's where my mom's family's from. What does that say about your society, your culture? And now when I look back on it, my grandma and I grew up in two very different Americas. And her experience shaped her entire views. And I can't be mad at her for that because she went through some bad shit.
What did she experience?
She was from Arkansas, man. The Klan was active there, dude. They would go right around town. She saw burning crosses and all that shit. That's one of the reasons why they wanted to get out of there and go to California.
Familien til James tok del i en av de største folkevandringene i moderne tid. 6 millioner svarte amerikanere flyktet nordover og vestover mellom 1916 og 1970. Men mange ble igjen i de gamle slavestatene og levde liv preget av rasistiske lover, frykt og regelrett terror.
I followed you into the blue and north into the cold. You led me off my land.
Joanne?
Joanne Bland bruker pensjonisttilværelsen til å lære nye generasjoner om den svarte borgerrettskampen hun var med å utkjempe.
No problem. Anything to help Selma.
To help Selma.
Yeah. And I think people in Norway should hear our story so they can come to Selma. See this building? It used to be a slave holding pen. The slaves were brought up from the river. You see it's still in its original condition on the outside. This is Martin Luther King Street. Every good city has one. This is ours. And it always runs through the poorest sections of town. Well, usually we have a Martin Luther King and a Jefferson Davis.
Jefferson Davis, who was the president of the Confederacy.
We renamed that street, though. We don't have it anymore.
When was the first time you realized that there was two different kinds of people in America and that you belonged to the group that was considered inferior?
Oh, early. The very first experience that I'll never forget was Easter is a big holiday in our community, right? And you get the new frock, new shoes, da-da-da-da. But we were poor, and our relatives from the north would send us boxes of mostly used clothing. I would think I was about 8. And I put the dress on, and I instantly turned into a princess. But I was blessed with big feet. So no shoes in the box fit me. We walked downtown, and I saw my shoe laying on the floor inside, my shoe. So I ran inside.
It called for you, it beckoned you.
You're right, and I put my foot in it. The sales clerk picked up the shoe, and she brought it to my grandmother, and she said in the nastiest voice, "Here." And my grandmother said, "Those are too big." She said, "You don't understand. That little nigger put her foot in it, and no one else would buy these shoes." And grandmother had to buy those big, big shoes for me and take them home. And I burst out and started crying. And she said, "Children, colored children, that's what we were called in, can't try on clothes and sell them." She said, "I know you didn't know, so don't feel bad. And I'm sorry this happened, but things are gonna change." And they did. They did, but it didn't make me feel any better that Easter Sunday, because I had to wear my old scuffed up Sunday shoes with my beautiful new dress and listen to the preacher talk about how Christ died to save me and to make my life better. And I thought he forgot me.
Å høre Joanne fortelle om det hun opplevde som barn gjør inntrykk. Men det sjokkerer meg dessverre ikke, for amerikansk historie er full av sånne opplevelser. Men kompisen min James fortalte meg noe som virkelig rystet meg. For det som skjedde her i Tulsa var helt jævlig. Og det verste er at jeg aldri hadde hørt om det før.
So these are placards for buildings that were lost during that time. So as you look down here and you see all of these little rectangles, each one of these represents a home or a business that was burnt down that day.
Here's a doctor.
Yeah, so this whole row was like doctors, lawyers, things like that. It was one of the worst incidents of domestic violence in the United States.
Terrorhandlingen som James snakker om, Tulsa-massakren sommeren 1921. Da ryktene begynte å gå om at en hvit jente skulle ha blitt antastet av en svart tenåringsgutt, gikk en hvit mobb til angrep på det velstående svarte nabolaget Greenwood.
They had basically running gunfights from the courthouse up to this area throughout the night. The black community was not large. They were outnumbered. So, they could put up a fight at first, but eventually they're going to get overwhelmed. I really like this monument because it shows 3 different facets of what happened. You have your people over here surrendering. You have people just trying to escape. But what really set Tulsa apart from all those other incidents that had happened in the late teens and the early 20s was the fact that Tulsans in a large group decided they were going to fight back. And that's what really brought the ire of the mob, because, how dare they oppose us? One of the things you had at the time in this area here in Tulsa, which is at the time was a very affluent place as far as, black Americans were concerned at the time. It was actually called Black Wall Street because, black people here were making money. You had black lawyers, you had black doctors, you had black teachers, black dentists.
It was almost like black upper middle class in a way.
Basically, and if there's one thing like racists couldn't stand, it's to see black people who they considered completely inferior doing well.
I løpet av 14 timer ble hele den svarte bydelen i Tulsa lagt i ruiner. Flere hundre mennesker ble drept, over 1200 hjem brent ned, og opp mot 8000 mennesker ble hjemløse. Massakren fikk også enorme økonomiske konsekvenser, ikke bare for de som overlevde, men også for generasjonene som kom etter.
What was here?
So It used to be my ancestor, J.B. Stratford's hotel. He had multiple businesses here in Tulsa, but the Stratford Hotel was like the crown jewel of his entrepreneurship, and at the time was one of the largest Black-owned hotels in the U.S. So, what did the Hiltons have in 1921 versus what they have today, and how that like kind of theft compounds over time of what's missed in terms of investments and ability to get loans and grow businesses or go public and have funding, and that's just gone. And so the plaque right here,
There's
Stratford Hotel.
Destroyed 1921, not reopened. So if it hadn't been for that,
You'd be looking at
you'd be
the
Paris
Stratford.
Hilton today.
Exactly. Well, I mean, not to say, hopefully Paris Hilton is something, but yes, like the legacy that they were able to build, that would be our family. What y'all doing over here today? How you doing?
Just putting up these bricks for a wall, a fence that we're gonna put up.
Okay, very nice. Is it with the church?
Yes.
You mentioned that somebody's planning on building a hotel here.
Yes, with the Wyndham Group.
So
It's
corporate America is
hurtful.
going to come in and open a hotel here using your family name.
Exactly, and I'm like, here in Tulsa, Stratford Hotel. It would be our dream to have another Stratford Hotel. I mean, you can imagine, but not the Wyndham Stratford Hotel. No, our family's Stratford Hotel. That would that would be wonderful, and it's frustrating, and I'm getting a little bit emotional. It is frustrating. So we're working on it. We're working on it. Sorry.
You get emotional?
I do get emotional sometimes. I think I don't want to be emotional right now. I get emotional sometimes because it's like every angle. You know what I mean? Every angle. It's like trying to close in what is yours. Now the name can't be ours. The Stratford Hotel name and legacy is like has to be taken from us. Like it's very frustrating is what I will stick with that word because I don't want to go too far on camera. It's powerful.
Men nesten verre enn alt at fortellingen om Tulsa-massakren ble dysset ned. Selv om den regnes som en av de verste terrorhandlingene på amerikansk jord noensinne, har mange amerikanere ikke engang hørt om det som skjedde.
Why don't people here know about it?
To know about it means to know your part in it. The same way that I can point to my, great-great-great-grandfather is the same way that someone can point to their great-great-great-grandfather who, massacred these people. It benefits them to try to dig their hands in the sand and to forget. But we can't forget.
But some people would say, that was 100 years ago, get over it. I mean, even Obama said that America is a post-racial society.
Well, Obama had to say that because he's the first Black president, I think that there is not a lot of leeway for him to go in and say, okay, let's do all this racial, reparation stuff, because they probably would have had his butt up out of there. But I think that what we know is the truth of the matter. The same person who would say that, why do you have the Confederate flag? If it's so far in the past, right? If it's so over, yet you still, you could drive around Oklahoma, a place that was never in the Confederacy, and see the Confederate flag.
This happened in 1921. The reconciliation happened in 2010. It was just another riot. There had been one in Houston, there'd been one in Chicago, there'd been in one in East St. Louis at the time.
Was this business as usual?
Sort of. When I moved to Tulsa, it was not something people in Tulsa talked about or acknowledged. This park was here. I found out about all this just because I was wandering around downtown one day and I found the park.
I read somewhere that school kids in Oklahoma weren't taught about the Tulsa massacre until 2002.
I mean, think about it. Why would you? That's the battle you always have with education. That's the battle you always have with history. It's like, do you tell the dirty parts and the good parts? People don't like teaching the idea that a lot of events and a lot of policies that happened in America had like a racial element to them. Critical race theory makes the people who built this country look bad sometimes, and that's why people don't like it, because you're tarnishing their heroes. You're making people like George Washington and Thomas Jefferson look bad when you talk about the fact that they went and pounded their chest and talked about liberty while at the same time owning people.
Dette critical race theory som James snakker om, eller CRT, et av de mest splittende begrepene I dagens USA. Inntil for bare et par år siden var dette kun en akademisk teori om strukturell rasisme I det amerikanske samfunnet. Men nå har det blitt et rødt flagg for den amerikanske høyresida.
Critical race theory is bigoted, it is a lie, and it is every bit as racist as the Klansmen in white sheets.
Critical race theory is a lie.
Racist critical race theory.
Critical race theory.
Critical race theory is being taught in our schools.
Påstander om at kritisk raseteori blitt en del av pensum på barneskolenivå har fått foreldre over hele USA til å reagere kraftig. Som på dette skolestyremøtet I velstående Loudoun utenfor Washington DC.
You know, parents are woken up, and we're not going to stand by and let our education system be destroyed. I mean, I don't want politics being injected into my kids' education. I want them to go to school to learn reading, writing, math.
Hvor mye CRT som faktisk undervises I amerikansk grunnskole usikkert. Men mange amerikanske foreldre frykter at deres barn skal læres opp til å ha skyldfølelse for fortidens overgrep, eller indoktrineres med tankegods de ser på som farlig.
You know, it's a Marxist ideology that really divides folks into two groups, oppressors and oppressed. I think it can be toxic. You know, I don't want my kids I don't want my daughters being told that they're oppressed because they're women. They're not oppressed. They can do anything they want. This is America.
For meg virker det som om denne kampen om skolepensum egentlig en kamp om hvilket Amerika skal være. Det en kamp som spiller seg ut på så mange arenaer I dagens USA. Som I Kongressen den 6. januar I fjor. For meg handlet den dagen I bunn og grunn om hvem som skal få ta del I det amerikanske demokratiet. Og det fortsatt ikke alle forunt.
Hello, Candace. Thomas.
Thomas,
How are
nice
you?
to meet you.
Look
The
at
whole
this guy.
family's coming to meet you. This is Mateo.
What is it?
He's a German Shepherd. He was a rare...
Candace demokrat og en engasjert lokalpolitiker som opplevde å bli utsatt for en av de vanligste formene for stemmemanipulasjon som finnes I det amerikanske valgsystemet.
Candace, in 2020, you ran for Congress in this district, and you lost it with the smallest possible margin. Are you going to run again?
Probably not, no. No.
Why not?
This district was drawn for my Republican opponent. She couldn't even hit 50% of the vote.
So the district you ran in doesn't exist anymore?
No, it doesn't.
It's been redrawn?
It has been redrawn to select more white voters and more Republican voters, more importantly.
What is gerrymandering?
So, yes, both parties had... Mateo.
He doesn't like the word.
He does not like gerrymandering. It's terrible, isn't it? Sir.
Dette finner ofte sted når delstatene tegner opp nye valgkretser I etterkant av folketellinger, for å sikre rettferdig fordeling av seter I representantenes hus I Kongressen. Men når delstatene overlater denne jobben til det partiet som har flertall I styre og stell, oppstår fort en mer opportunistiske variant av denne øvelsen, såkalt gerrymandering. Det handler om å tegne valgdistrikter som gir flest mulig stemmer til eget parti. Enten ved å pakke inn eller samle det andre partiets velgere I noen få begrensede distrikter, sånn at ditt eget parti kan vinne flere distrikter totalt, eller å dele opp eller vanne ut det andre partiets velgere ved å spre dem tynt utover I flere distrikter, så de ikke kan danne flertall noe sted. Resultatet ofte at valgdistrikt ser helt absurde ut. Og derav navnet på metoden, som er oppkalt etter en guvernør fra Massachusetts. For å sikre gjenvalg i 1812 tegnet partiet hans opp et valgdistrikt som skulle gi ham seieren, og som ble seende ut som en salamander. Jerry pluss salamander er lik gerrymander.
So this area right here was cut off in this new district. This area right here has a very large population of color. There's a lot of African Americans and Latinos in this area.
Yeah, that's just sort of amputated. Surgically removed.
It was surgically removed. And speaking of surgical precision right here, as I told you, I live in this thumbtack. So I live roughly in this area right here. My neighborhood was drawn into the district of another Democrat. This neighborhood is also a majority person of color.
They drew your house out of the district?
They drew my house out of the district.
That's crazy.
Yes.
How does that make you feel?
Well, the cynical part of me expected this, but the part of me that still believes in democracy, the part of me that still believes that the American dream can and should be accessible to everybody is absolutely devastated. Another thing that they did was they shut down what we call 24-hour voting polls. That was just designed so that people getting off of work at whatever time they get off of work could come in, exercise their right to vote, and go home.
For people who work long days and inconvenient hours.
That's correct. And the majority of the folks who voted there were minorities, were people of color. They also put a lot of restrictions on who can give a ride to someone, who can drive them in their car to the polls. And that's in fact what did happen here in Texas, so that politicians get to choose the people instead of people choosing their politicians.
Dette er helt i tråd med filosofien til en av vår tids mest innflytelsesrike republikanere.
They want everybody to vote. I don't want everybody to vote. Elections are not won by a majority of people. They never have been from the beginning of our country, and they are not now.
Den kristenkonservative partistrategen Paul Weyrich sa det rett ut. Det republikanske partiet er best tjent med at ikke alle som har stemmerett får avgi stemme. For 15 år tidligere hadde borgerrettsbevegelsen kjempet fram loven som forbød diskriminering av svarte velgere. Noe som hadde fått antallet svarte demokrater til å skyte i været.
I'm going back south, down to Carolina. I'm gonna plant myself under a magnolia. I'm gonna let that dirt do its work. I'm gonna plant myself under a magnolia, a magnolia, magnolia, a magnolia, a magnolia.
Joanne var bare 11 år gammel da hun deltok i den historiske marsjen for stemmerettigheter i Selma, Alabama.
I know how important voting is, and I try to teach the young people and generations to come that how important it is, because we who were without know that it took a battle. We had to cross that bridge, and now every time you turn around, there's an attack. We're trying to stop people. Some faction is trying to stop another faction from voting, and we're all citizens of the United States. So why shouldn't we enjoy the same rights? Our first attempt here in Selma to march for the right to vote from Selma to Montgomery to demand the right from our then governor, we were attacked by law enforcement officers. I was 11 years old, and that morning I had no idea that there would be violence, or I wouldn't have gone. When suddenly I hear what I thought were gunshots and screams. Before we could turn to run, it was too late. The policemen came in from both sides, the front and the back, and they were just beating people. Old, young, black, white, male, female, it didn't matter. They were just beating people. People lay everywhere, bleeding, not moving. It was simply awful. The last thing I remember on that bridge that day was seeing this horse and this lady. Some of the policemen were on horses, And they were riding the horses right into the crowd. People were being trampled. This lady, I don't know what happened. Did the man on the horse hit her, or did the horse just run over her? I don't know. All these years later, 56 years later, I can still hear the sound her head made when it hit that pavement.
Det var kanskje ikke tilfeldig at Trumps påstander om valgfusk først og fremst rettet seg mot byer med en stor andel svarte velgere. Jeg tror det handlet om å fyre opp under den gamle frykten for at svarte og brune amerikanere er en trussel mot det hvite hegemoniet. Ifølge den anerkjente statsviteren Robert Pape var det nettopp det som drev hvite amerikanere til å storme Kongressen. Frykten for å miste makt og status.
When the rioters of January 6th were screaming, "Stop the steal," were they actually screaming, "Stop the vote"?
Oh, absolutely, right? And those two things, claims of election corruption and mistrust of minority political participation have long gone together. So, you know, if we think of the disfranchisement campaigns of the 1890s.
All the stuff designed to stop the poor people, and especially poor black people, from voting.
Right. Those reforms were justified through the language of political corruption, right, or electoral corruption, in the same way that the democratic experiment of Reconstruction was re-narrated as a period of gross incompetence and corruption. The idea that black folks in politics must be up to no good, right, signaled a dysfunction of politics is an old argument and old story that Trump's kind of unwillingness to admit he lost picked up on and pushed forward into our era.
You think some of the people who stormed the Congress are just tired of democracy?
What they want is to not have to think about race as something that has done any work in the past and continues to do in the present. They want the benefits of democracy to redound to them, and they see it as a zero-sum game, right? That if some people have something, then that must be taking things away from them.
So if you have more rights, I'll have less rights.
Yes. And I think that they would be perfectly happy with the kind of constrained and pallid version of democracy that preceded the democratic reform of the 1960s, right? If, like, black people will just be quiet and go away, that would be fine with them. What they don't understand is that you sort of, like, narrow what democracy means and who it encompasses, and at some point you will be shooting yourself in the foot, right? When some people are worth less, when some lives are worth less, then eventually, like, that devaluing will expand to hit others. That exclusion will expand to exclude others, right? So they're acting out of a self-interest that I would say doesn't actually capture, like, their interests.
Okay, you've been through one side of town. I'm gonna take you to another side of town that was all white in the 60s. This Selma has perhaps the largest.
Traffic light, camera ahead.
Shut up. Where I'm taking you is Selma's oldest white cemetery. Look at these trees, aren't they magnificent?
Look at that. It looks like a movie set.
I know.
That's some familiar flags.
No kidding. And they decided to erect this monument when we elected our first African-American mayor.
Was that a response to the black mayor?
Exactly. This really brings it up to today, because this shows you that it's not gone. There are still people who think like this.
Who was this? What's his name?
Nathan Bedford Forrest.
And he was a slave owner?
Mm-hmm. Slave breeder.
Breeder? What does that mean?
He bred slaves like you do cattle, and then when the baby's born, you sell the baby. That's what he did to human beings, and he's supposed to be our hero.
Wow. It says a defender of Selma, wizard of the saddle. The word wizard is sort
Grand Wizard of the KKK. And he was. Some say he founded the KKK. But I just think it's awful. I want you to look at those flags. On this side, you see the Confederate flag of America. Over there, you see that battle flag, right? Where the hell is the American flag?
There's no stars and stripes here. How do you feel when you're standing here?
I'm jaded with it now. When I first came out here, it used to make my flesh crawl. But now I just feel a sadness sometimes when I come out here to think that people are still using this as an excuse to hate.
Ja, når jeg står her ved den legendariske Edmund Pettus-broa her i Selma, Alabama, hjertet av de gamle sørstatene, så slår det meg at den amerikanske borgerkrigen, den tok aldri slutt. Mange jeg snakker med her nede sier at slaveriet, det er den amerikanske arvesynden, og det tror jeg de har rett i. Men det jeg tror virkelig river og sliter i Amerika den dag i dag, det er det faktum at det aldri ble tatt et oppgjør med slaveriet. Jeg tror USA hadde vært en bedre, rikere og langt sterkere nasjon dersom man hadde tatt et moralsk og juridisk oppgjør etter borgerkrigen, sånn som tyskerne gjorde med nazismen etter andre verdenskrig. Men det skjedde aldri her. Og selv om mange amerikanere mener de er ferdige med historien, tror ikke jeg historien er helt ferdig med dem.
But that's just really fucking annoying. On top of everything else, that they didn't even give a shit about identifying the bodies or telling the families the next of kin. They just threw a bunch of them in a hole together. So now we get to the part where there's just numbers. Look at this. And you have along here and all these beautiful headstones with, the family name, and then you have a group of bodies that no one ever identified. It's just really sad.
Martin Luther King once said that the arc of history bends towards justice.
I think that's a very optimistic way to put it. If nothing else, Martin Luther King was an optimist. History is mostly written by winners, and there's not always justice involved. It's usually the version that they want to tell themselves. It's usually the version of things that they agree to believe.
Maybe it's time to let the old ways die. Maybe it's time to let the old ways die. Takes a lot to change a man.
That's all weapons.
All that is weapons?
Those are all weapons, yeah.
Did you ever feel that you sort of brought the war home with you?
You bring it everywhere with you. You don't just bring it down. It's in you. You don't ever just forget the experiences. You don't ever just you don't put it in a box and bury it. It's just kind of there.
Okay.
Oh, maybe it's time to let the old ways die.